On June 29, 2020, Maurice Smith and his girlfriend Darionne Burley walked into a Waffle House in Fort Worth, Texas. Darionne was pregnant with twin boys, and this restaurant was one of her favorites to eat at. When they finished their meal, the couple paid their check and walked out of the restaurant and got into their vehicle. Shortly after leaving the restaurant, Darionne's body would be found in this car, with a single gunshot wound to the upper body.
Did you talk to Sergeant Hugh about what you saw?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I called 911, and that was really it.
On June 29, 2020, Mansfield, Texas, became the final scene of a tragedy nobody saw coming. Police responded to a carjacking, a stolen vehicle, a panicked victim, a clear crime. But when officers examined the Honda Civic left behind, the case exploded into something far more devastating. Slumped in the passenger seat was a woman, 26-year-old Darionne Burley. She was deceased, killed by a single gunshot to the head, a singular horror. But it was a small piece of paper, recovered from her wallet, that redefined the entire situation. It was a sonogram photo. That photo showed two distinct forms, two tiny lives, twin A and twin B, two unborn boys. The official charge wasn't murder, it was capital murder of multiple persons. This isn't just one life lost, it's three. No, seriously, it's three lives shattered in a single fatal instant. This wasn't a sudden crime of opportunity, this was the catastrophic final act of escalating domestic danger. How does a public promise of future life become the private trigger for three deaths? The killer was Darionne's boyfriend, Maurice Smith. After the shooting, he drove 20 miles with the bodies of his family to find an escape. He committed another armed robbery, desperate for a clean getaway car. But in his panic, he left the Civic, the victim, and the definitive proof of the triple homicide at the exact same location as his second crime. He left a trail of evidence that was inescapable. If you know someone, a friend, a family member, a colleague, who is focused on escaping an abusive relationship, or if you are in one yourself, you need to watch this entire story. Because by the end, I'm going to give you two very strong, actionable tips on how to escape and prevent domestic violence and relationship abuse. But first, let's look at the beginning. A celebration that should have been a safeguard. Welcome to True Crime Footprint, where we unveil the darkest mysteries and the most terrifying true crime tales. Kindly hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our new stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Think about the happiest news you've ever shared. The kind of news that lights up an entire room where everything feels possible. Now ask yourself, could that very joy be the trigger for a nightmare? For Darionne Burley, joy came in multiples. At 26, her life was entirely focused on the imminent arrival of her two sons. In May 2020, just weeks before the end, she and her boyfriend, Maurice Smith, threw a joyful gender reveal party. This wasn't a secret, it was a public declaration of family, a confirmation of shared commitment. Her close friends and family recall a deep devotion into the life she was creating. She was excited, counting down the days. The promise of motherhood was everything. Darionne wrote this herself. Twin A and Twin B are coming soon. My heart is so full for my two baby boys. But the man sharing that hopeful future had a shadow. Maurice Smith was not simply an unstable partner. He was a combination of severe risk factors. Court records confirmed a prior felony conviction for burglary of a habitation. He was also actively violating his parole terms, and critically, evidence showed he was heavily using drugs that June. This convergence, a precarious legal status and acute substance abuse, created a highly volatile situation. A man already operating outside the law, struggling with dependency, was preparing to become a father. The question remains, how does a public promise of future life become the private trigger for three deaths? The answer lies in the shift that happened almost immediately after that celebration. Prosecutors proved that the relationship moved past verbal arguments and crossed the line into physical abuse. In early June 2020, shortly after the gender reveal, Smith physically assaulted Darionne. The celebration was a public promise of a future. The assault was a private, brutal violation of that trust. Darionne's family and friends noticed the change, and grew profoundly concerned for her safety. They tried to intervene, sensing a terrifying, mounting pressure. This wasn't a spontaneous act. It was the start of a lethal pattern. And that pattern reached its irreversible peak when Smith made a cold, deliberate acquisition. He bought the murder weapon on June 28, 2020, the day before the murder. This is where the pattern is clear. This wasn't a spontaneous eruption of rage. This was a plan. We know Maurice Smith physically assaulted Darionne in early June. We know he was using drugs and violating parole. But the most damning evidence of all relates to June 28, 2020, the day before the murder. Smith went out and illegally purchased the firearm he would use. This acquisition introduces a critical truth. The murder wasn't the result of a heated argument. It was a cold, fatal decision. He secured the weapon with the intent to use it on the woman carrying his twin sons. If someone you love starts planning your end, how do you ever see the sign in time? The fatal day, June 29, 2020, began with a final, mundane moment of normalcy. Smith and Darionne were last seen together exiting a Waffle House in the Fort Worth area. They walked out of that brightly lit restaurant and into the car, presumably headed toward a continuation of their day. Within the hour of that last sighting, the tragedy had fully run its course. The sequence was rapid and devastating. Smith lifted the illegally acquired weapon, aimed, and pulled the trigger. Darionne Burley sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the back of her head. This method of execution, a shot from behind, tells you everything you need to know about the act. The victim was likely unaware or defenseless at the moment of the attack. It was a calculated action against a pregnant woman, killing 3 lives at once. The crime was done, but the evidence remained. Smith had to disappear. He drove to Mansfield, approximately 20 miles away from the murder site, with Darionne's body slumped next to him. He was driving a dead woman and 2 unborn children. The fear and desperation must have been absolute, overwhelming any rational thought. He needed a clean vehicle. He needed to escape. And in that frenzy, he was about to make the only mistake that truly mattered, guaranteeing the authorities would trace him directly back to his crime. Did the family's fear mentioned earlier hint at this outcome? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if this documentary approach is keeping you focused, take 2 seconds to hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. It helps us bring these stories to light. Now let's see the error that cost Maurice Smith his freedom. Maurice Smith drove 20 miles with Darionne's body, intending to leave his past behind. He stopped in Mansfield, desperate for a vehicle that couldn't be traced to the murder. He approached a woman, pointed his weapon, and stole her car in an aggravated robbery. But here is where his panic became his undoing. He abandoned the Honda Civic, the car containing Darionne, her unborn sons, and the ballistic evidence, at the exact site of the carjacking. When police arrived to investigate the robbery, they found the abandoned car, and inside the full scope of the tragedy. Smith had traded one crime for another, creating an undeniable, physical link between himself and the capital murder. The discovery of Darionne's body was a tragic homicide, but the discovery next to her, the sonogram photo, immediately elevated the case. The police realized they weren't investigating one murder, they were investigating 3. Under Texas law, the deaths of Darionne Burley and her 2 unborn sons meant the perpetrator faced the charge of capital murder of multiple persons. The case became a priority manhunt, fueled by the gravity of the crime. Investigators quickly tracked the stolen car to Smith's Fort Worth apartment. The chase was short. When police found Smith, he wasn't mourning. He was cleaning. He was actively trying to destroy the critical evidence in the stolen vehicle. Officers recovered bloody clothes and, crucially, the murder weapon. Every subsequent action Smith took was calculated, attempting another robbery in the neighborhood, then focusing solely on escape and evasion. Even in custody, Smith tried to fool the system. He was transported to the hospital on suspicion of an overdose, but testimony later showed he was faking his intoxication and memory lapse, even attempting to pick the lock on his handcuffs. He only cared about getting away.
New at 10 o'clock, Mansfield now. Police there say that they have arrested a man who shot and killed his girlfriend, who was pregnant with twins. This all happened on Monday, we're told, after her body was found in a vehicle along Highway 287. 28-year-old Maurice Smith is now facing a capital murder charge, along with separate aggravated robbery as well as burglary charges.
If you missed the critical piece of evidence that convicted him, the illegal gun purchase, rewind now and look at the table. The date was right there in the chronology. That single action showed his intent long before the fatal hour. The evidence was overwhelming. The focus now shifted to the courtroom, where prosecutors needed to show how a relationship meant to create life became an execution. After years of waiting, the Tarrant County jury trial for Maurice Smith finally concluded in March 2024. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorneys Alana Bangs and Kate Hinojosa, meticulously presented the evidence. They did not just present the facts of June 29, 2020, they focused on the pattern. They showed the illegal gun purchase, the domestic assault in early June, and the calculated decision that followed. The full picture revealed the true sequence of events. The violence was not an accident, it was a consequence. After deliberating, the jury found Maurice Smith guilty of the capital murder of multiple persons. The state had waived the death penalty, so the conviction carried an automatic, mandatory sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Accountability was achieved. But what final truth can possibly heal this devastation? Following the verdict, the Burley family delivered powerful victim impact statements. They detailed what life could have been for Darionne and her two sons. They spoke not just about the loss of a 26-year-old woman, but about the profound future erased for two boys who never had a chance to breathe. Their final statement emphasized the terrible nature of domestic violence. There are no winners here. Even with justice served, the trauma of this triple homicide is permanent. Darionne Burley's legacy is defined by the 3 lives she lost and the agonizing necessity of these conversations. This story is a tragic footprint of what happens when a controlling relationship turns lethal. Our goal with True Crime Footprint is to ensure these devastating lessons lead to action. If you or someone you know is caught in a pattern of relational abuse, you promise to watch until the end for these 2 critical strategies. Please listen closely, because recognizing the pattern is the first step toward survival. Abuse rarely starts with a physical attack. Look for these escalating danger signs: degradation, constant verbal abuse, insults, and belittling; domination, controlling your money, movements, and friends. Isolation is key to their strategy. Desperation. The partner starts engaging in high-risk behaviors like heavy drug use or serious illegal activity. Destruction. The first physical assault. The moment this line is crossed, you must leave. Do not stay to negotiate or believe promises. The risk of homicide has spiked. Tip 2. Planning an escape must be discreet. Create a prearranged, simple, and non-contextual code word with just one trusted outside person, a relative, a friend, or a coworker. When you send them that word in a text or mention it in a call, they know to immediately call emergency services or come for you. No questions asked. This bypasses the need to explain the danger while you are in the line of fire. The memory of Darionne Burley and her 2 sons, Twin A and Twin B, deserves more than just our sorrow. It demands our awareness. We hope this knowledge helps someone escape their own escalating danger. If you found this story compelling and learned something valuable, please like this video right now. Share it with someone who needs to see these signs, and subscribe to True Crime Footprint so you never miss another case where we turn tragedy into awareness. Our hearts ache for Darionne's family. Words feel inadequate, but please know you are held in deepest sympathy and prayers. May you find strength and comfort in the memories of Darionne. Thank you for watching, for your attention, and for joining us on this journey of reflection. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and above all, stay safe. See you on our next video.